This is Sahara TV coverage of Nigeria's 2019 elections. Nigeria Decide 2019. Tune in on election day for 24-hour coverage.
Welcome back to Sahara TV. My name is Rudolph Okonkwo. We're here one day after the postponement of the 2019 presidential election in Nigeria. And we want to explore what happened and the way forward. And joining me for that conversation is on my immediate left, Dr. Baba Aye.
Comrade Baba, good day. How are you?
Okay. Let me. Sorry. Nice to have you on Sahara TV.
My pleasure.
Okay. At the other end is someone you are familiar with. He's Dr. Malcolm Fabi, who is the Director General of the Sahara 2019 campaign. Malcolm, welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So we're all hopeful that today we will be watching the polls and watching the results and looking at the political scene and seeing what will happen.
Yes.
But that didn't happen. So as leader of the campaign, Sahara campaign, tell us what is the reaction, official reaction of the campaign?
Well, so the first thing is, we're not too surprised. In 2011, something very similar happened. On the day of, in fact, this was even slightly better. It's terrible, but it's slightly better. In 2011, it was on the day off. It was at about 7, 8 a.m. in the morning in 2011, before the announcement went out that the elections had been postponed, like they did today, by a week. In 2015, it wasn't even by a week. It was by a couple of months. So this is what happens when establishment parties panic. This is what happens when they realize that they're not ready for elections. This is what happens when they get afraid that they're going to be rejected at the polls. So it wasn't a surprise to us, but at the same time, we also have made it very clear that Nigerians should also not become numb to the fact that this is not normal. If there's one thing that any government knows, it is the fact that elections are going to take place every 4 years. So you have 4 years to prepare for elections. And the idea that we get to the day of the elections, there's nothing INEC found out yesterday that they didn't know 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago. So the reality is, anybody that thinks this is about INEC being ready or not ready, that's not what's going on. What's going on is the APC is not ready for elections. The PDP was no better when they were in office. This is about positioning to make sure that you can put the tools in place that can help you manipulate the elections. It's not about the Nigerian people. It's about survival for the parties.
Now, comrade, what does that mean for Nigerian people who were ready to go and vote?
Well, I would say we have a twofold problem here. There's the question of incompetence, most likely, especially when you look at the trend over the years. But there's also clearly very severe political undercurrents, because you look at it, at least 3 offices of INEC had been touched over the last few days. Sensitive materials have already gone out. And there were talk about officials of INEC in closed-door meetings with officials of the presidency. It is very clear that the presidency, that the ruling APC is scared silly of losing. And one major impact of this is that it throws a shadow over the credibility of the polls, you know. And it's just next Saturday, but you can also see the mass anger. It's like taking Nigerians for granted. It's like saying we just don't matter, you know. We're just like mannequins to fulfill the desires of the puppeteers, you know. But Nigerians are tired of that. Nigerians don't want that again. And what they're trying to do to kind of wriggle out of a situation that it was clear that they just might not win, and they're ready to win at all costs. The president told the CNN that he was not going to be unseated. Very, very undemocratic language, so to speak. So they wanted to wiggle out, but they could have a backlash that could make the situation worse. So for Nigerians, this is it's becoming very unbecoming. It's not just about incompetence, it's also about political undercurrents, and we're fed up with this kind of approach to electioneering. And for the ruling APC, trouble is coming.
Now, Malcolm, if we believe the INEC people, is 1 week enough for them to put in place things that they couldn't put in place for the last 3 years or something?
I'm not sure what they want to put in place.
They said that some materials are not at the places they should be. Do they think they could do the magic in 1 week?
Well, so let's put it this way. I believe that if INEC had wanted to stage the elections today, they could have staged the elections. As of 2 days ago, the INEC chairperson came out and told us INEC was ready for these elections. Now we hear they need time to put things in place. Well, here's the good news. The good news is from east to west, from north to south, Nigeria at any point is no more than 1,500 kilometers. It doesn't take too much to make sure that whatever you need to get in place gets in place. But here's the other thing I'll add. It's not just about moving elections. We're talking about INEC. INEC has at its disposal all of the strength, the power, and the resources of the Nigerian state. Anything that INEC needs to get materials to wherever it needs to get them to is available to it. I think we should remember what parties like ours and the Nigerian people are going through. So I'll give you an example. There are 120,000 polling units. For parties like us, we had mobilized agents to those polling units. Parties like us had sent messages to all of our people to be at those polling units. Mobilizing agents is not easy. It takes resources. And while they have access to the Nigerian state, while the APC has access to the federal coffers and the CBN, because that's where they steal their monies from, while the PDP has access to the monies they've stolen in the past and the ones from the states they control, we rely on the Nigerian people. So what has just happened today is that all of those resources that have been mobilized to make sure that polling unit agents, to make sure that our ward chairpersons, to make sure that our local government electoral officers, to make sure that our parties' state officers, to make sure that our zonal coordinators were mobilized, to make sure things were in place, all of that has been wasted. And all of that has to be repeated again in a week's time. So this is deliberate. Anybody that thinks this was just thinking about Nigerians and thinking about how to make things better, absolutely not. You don't call off an election hours before the election was supposed to take place. So I still strongly believe, and that is the position of our party and our movement, that this was a coordinated attempt at two things. One, to prevent the APC from a clear loss that was coming their way. And secondly, to try to destabilize organizations like ours, because they know that we don't have the type of resources that they have to essentially switch around and get things in motion again within a week. But I think they're going to be in for a very big surprise. Because again, there's nothing that has happened here that completely took us by surprise. We had hoped they would not come up with their usual shenanigans. But having seen what happened in 2011 and 2015, there was always the possibility that they would repeat this. And here we are. What the PDP did twice, the APC has now done. So when we tell Nigerians that the establishment parties are one and the same, and that the APC and PDP are two sides of the same bad coin, they've now demonstrated it in every way, not just in their ineptitude in government, but in their lack of ability to conduct something as simple and basic as a presidential election.
Now, as a trade unionist, what does this mean for ordinary Nigerians who today factored in that they are going to be at home, they will just go and vote and be at home? What are the losses? What does that mean for the regular people?
It means a terrible state for many. Don't forget that 90% of the Nigerian labor force is an informal economy. A lot of people live by the day, by the hour, so to speak, even, particularly in our metropoles. And what that means is people took the sacrifice of today. They couldn't really get into the rhythm of economic activities today. You see, the streets are still largely bare. Now they have to make the same sacrifice next week. And apart from that, there's some, I watched, I saw this picture on a friend's Facebook page and I almost wept. There was this woman who had some basins of kunu, which she probably borrowed money from to even have that much. And she was close to to a polling unit. The intention was that with people standing under the sun, she would make some sales, and be able to use these for her family, and there she was now. Most of that kunu will go to waste. She doesn't have what it takes to preserve this thing. So, and there will be dozens, if not hundreds and thousands of people like that woman spread across the 774 local governments and the different polling units. So you see the impact is very there. And you also look at processes in the formal sector that employers could even factor that in, like in oil and what have you, in auto baits, where you have to shut down systems. But also look at individuals. There were several people that today might have been when they would have fixed for their weddings and so many social engagements. They now fix next week.
Yeah. So
they now have to much more costs. There are some things that you just can't, that had been fixed for that money paid. Some maybe you add more money to then shift it to where you want to make it. Even notices like invitation cards to all this. So what they have done, and this is part of why you are seeing the kind of anger that is palpable, livid, on social media, but common women and men, youths, Nigerians saying, why again and why now? And you know what? One of the things that can make anyone angry on this matter, some of the supporters of the APC say, it happened in 2011, it happened in 2015. Then, where is the change that the APC was supposed to represent? How come this is even in a more shameless manner than what you had hitherto? So the impact is quite there, and I think that Nigerians should insist that the ruling class, these establishment parties, should stop taking us for a ride. I think we are getting to that point that this must be the very last time in the history of elections in Nigeria that we're going to have this kind of postponement.
All right, one last question to you, Malcolm. Now we have 1 week. Is the party going to continue to campaign, or do you just wait until next week? What is the plan? Are you allowed to start campaigning again for the election on Saturday, or is everything going to be at a standstill?
So that is the idiocy of what INEC and the APC just did. In theory, campaigns are supposed to have ended on February 14th. Now they've moved it forward. They've talked about everything else, but what happens to campaigning? Well, here's what we're doing. We're engaging with the Nigerian people. So all it does is it gives us another week to continue with our engagements. So we're engaging on all platforms. From the very beginning, ours was a very organic, very grassroots, a very retail-oriented campaign. We had never believed in the campaign of rallies where people are bought, people are paid to be in the audience. So the way in which we campaign, the amount of time that's available to us lends itself excellently to what we need to do. So our people, even now, are back out in the streets. They are engaging with their neighbors. They are in the street corners. We are on social media. We are on WhatsApp. We are on every platform that Nigerians are engaged on, and we're reaching out to them. So every single hour that we get to be able to get our message across, we're grabbing it and we're utilizing it.
All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation.
The TV and overfed ruling class did not only create wealth for the minority, dear friends, cronies, and stalwarts, and hunger for the majority, but also created a people who see themselves as hungry Yorubas, hungry Igbos, hungry Hausas. The seems to have succeeded in creating hungry pastors and hungry imams. All this in the bid to crush the resistance by the hungry people. We shall be free the day we realize that there are only hungry Nigerians.
Welcome back. Once again, this is Rudolph Okonkwo, and here with me to continue our conversation is Dr. Malcolm Fabi, and on my immediate left is Comrade Baba Aye. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Malcolm. All right. So before we went on break, we were talking about the postponement of the election, but let's look beyond the election. You know, whatever happens, where does the movement? How do you hope to keep the momentum going? What is the next thing after the election?
Thank you very much, and that's an incredibly important question. And in order to know what we'll do beyond the elections, I think it's probably worth going back to see what we did before we became a political party. So the first thing we did, before Nigerians even ever heard of a political party, the African Action Congress, is that we formed the Take It Back movement. Our belief and the actions that propelled that were very simple and straightforward. Our fundamental view is that Nigerian politics suffers primarily from the lack of ideology. That what makes it possible for somebody to be in APC today and in PDP tomorrow is because there is no ideological underpinning. If I go to the US and somebody tells me they're Democrats, I don't even need to know them before being able to describe to you 80 to 90% of what they believe about the role of government in politics, about the role of government in people's lives, about welfareism, about job creation, about the economic philosophy of their government. The same thing in the UK. If you go to the UK today and somebody told you they were a Tory or they were in the Labour Party, you have a very clear understanding of what they believe. So what we started out with was the movement. And that's what would continue. So after the elections, what Nigerians can expect from the Take It Back movement is that the Take It Back movement is going to become one of the primary organizations that are pushing forward socio-political programs in this country. We will continue to engage with the Nigerian people. We will continue to seek out areas of Nigerian life that we will continue to engage with, whether it is helping to shore up the educational system, whether it's helping to address the challenges with IDPs and the displacement of internally displaced persons within our own society, whether it is helping to ensure that Nigerians' political consciousness is raised, whether it's helping to ensure that Nigerians that are out there, young people, that have been abandoned by their governments, are provided with tools that can help them become entrepreneurs, that we can continue to do as a political party, even outside of government. Those are the things that we will continue to do. We will continue to speak truth to power, and we'll continue to find opportunities for engagement with the Nigerian people. So the movement continues regardless.
Now, Comrade, you know the Nigerian people, and we've been on the street talking to them about this election. And one of the commonest comments that we hear from them is simply that when you ask about the new parties and the younger people who are running for office, is that they can't win. They don't have structures in place. Why is it that Nigerian people will tell you that they don't trust these two major parties, but they will not vote for an alternative because they cannot win? What is wrong with that thinking?
Well, I wouldn't say something is wrong with their thinking. The fact about politics is, before you win power, you actually have to express power. And that's why I think it was Frederick Douglass who said, power does not take even a single step backwards, except in the face of greater power, because power respects power. Part of the problem is that hitherto we have not really had parties that had different distinct ideologies, from the apologies to Fela chop and claim out like say not happen ideology of the dominant classes, and that also at the same time had a critical mass. What you have in the TIB AAC is a critical mass around a new kind of politics. And it is also not accidental. It's part of a global movement. There are times in history where you have cracks in the hegemony of the dominant parties. It's not accidental that you are having what you're seeing now. It's part of the same movement historically, the conjuncture we are in now, that saw bodies like Syriza thrown up in Greece, Podemos in Spain, someone like Cortez and the Democratic Socialists of America grew from like 5,000 to 50,000 people, you know, under the inspiration of Bernie Sanders. A Jeremy Corbyn that when he said he was running for, it was like a joke. It's not accidental. And in all those places too, you would have seen that for ages hitherto, except for the establishment parties, other parties were not taken serious. But there is a crack. And what brings about that crack? What brings about that crack is the crisis, the systemic crisis of capitalism that you have seen from the period of the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. So along with economic crisis, you have had political crisis. People are questioning the things that hitherto their legitimacy appeared, like Julius Caesar's wife, to have been above questioning. So what you have now is the lighting. This is an ignition, and TIB is lighting an ignition that with the spirit it has moved. I point out to people that this movement, this party has not just been about come and vote. This is a party that was on the streets for press freedom. This is a party that was at INEC to demand that, you know, towards the issue of people. This is a party that is a fighting party, a party fighting for the rights, for the interests of working class people and youths. You know, so we might be reaching a new phase in the political landscape of Nigeria as part of a global historical moment.
Now, Marco, let me ask you, because what he's saying is also connected to what I'm about to ask you. The issue of people saying that your party should form the third force, so to say, that is an alternative to the two APC and PDP, which we know are not totally different from each other. What happened to the idea of coming together with the other parties to be that alternative, knowing that in most African countries, whether it's Kenya or Uganda, for the political party that is in opposition to take down the major party in office, they tend to, or the only option seems to be that they have to come together with other small parties to form that second force. What is the state of that discussion?
So here's where we are with that. I think if you look back to our antecedents, if you look back to at least the major characters that formed TIB, especially our convener, Showore, his background is coalitions. He started out as a student activist. And as student activists, and you know, both Aya and myself actually got to know Showore when we were both in Unilag as student activists. Student activists you are dead in the water without the civil rights and human rights lawyers that are going to bail you out when the inevitable happens and the university either rusticates you or you get arrested. We are dead in the water without the labor activists that are some of the people powering some of the engagements that we have on the streets. We're dead in the water without those that are out there, that were out there at the time providing us with the engagement with the masses on the streets. So the truth of the matter is we come from a perspective where coalitions are normal and natural. However, we're at a point in our history as a country, and certainly in terms of the history of our movement, where what has become more important to us is ensuring that there is a voice. We have a unique voice. We're the only ones that said Nigerian workers deserve 100,000 naira living wage. It's non-negotiable. We're the only ones who have come out and said that the solution to our security crisis is not in papering up the issues, is not in prettying up the problem, it's in fundamentally addressing the questions of restructuring that have led to some of the agitations that have led to this crisis. We are on record as saying, for example, that it was the abuse of the human rights of the leader of Boko Haram that took what was a regional and very localized conflict and turned it into something that has almost consumed that entire portion of the country and has now taken on global terroristic dimensions. And so there's a uniqueness to what we bring to the table. We are already a coalition. We, the TIB and the AAC party, are a coalition of the oppressed, a coalition of the ignored, a coalition of what people would have called the inconsequential. And we remain completely open to discussions about how to move Nigeria forward. We're at a point today where today would have been an election. So the reality is those conversations will continue. They will continue beyond the elections. The elections are now going to be next week. And I think what Nigerians will find next week is that there is only one authentic non-establishment voice. When the elections are done and the waters settle, what Nigerians will see very clearly is that the Take It Back movement and our party, the African Action Congress, will be and will clearly emerge as the leading voice for ensuring that all of the aspirations of Nigerians for a country that works and for the kicking out of the old establishment and the cabals that have held us captive for the last 58 years, we will emerge very clearly as the rallying point for everyone that is interested in moving this nation forward.
Okay, we have just 1 minute left. Let me ask both of you, what did you learn from this experience? I know you are going back to Switzerland where you are based. What did you learn being here for the past 1 month and watching the political process?
Well, I've learned a lot, but also, I was Deputy National Secretary of the Labour Party for almost a decade. Yeah, I was part of Mimiko's campaign and a couple, so I'm not exactly new to this kind of campaigns, but the difference is the spirit, you know, and it's the kind of spirit that some of us at Iteto envisioned for the Labour Party before the way it went. And yeah, I'll say what I've learned is that you have a renovation of layers of young working class and professional people who want to make a better society of what we have now, and we're going all out to get that done. And I think that is something to really, really nourish and lead us forward.
Okay, Malcolm.
What I've learned is that the Nigerian people are ready for change. I mean, we have been incredibly, as a party and as a movement, we have been, we knew that there was a strong sentiment for change, a strong sentiment for positive transformation, because the word change has been bastardized. I have been incredibly impressed by the sacrifices that many Nigerians have been willing to make. And the time is now. And what we'll say to all of those who were disappointed that the elections didn't hold today is that the loss of the establishment parties that did not happen on the 16th, we've just postponed it by 1 more week. It gives us enough more time, another week, to pound the pavements and move things forward and engage with people. And that's what we're asking Nigerian people and especially our supporters to do. The time is now. That's what I've learned, that people really want to make this nation move forward. And we have been excited by the positivity with which we have been received, and we are absolutely confident that this is going to happen, that we will take it back on the 23rd.
Thank you so much, Baba, for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much.
So we continue our programs. We hope you continue to watch. Stay tuned.